Was the catalyst today bullish? The answer, probably not. US non-farm payrolls came in at 22K, and this is not to mention, this is before the BLS payroll revision on September 9th, which most of the time they kind of up the numbers on the initial reading, which would put us in a very bad spot. And I'll explain how big players, big money is positioning as well, as retail traders are assuming that we are going to get some massive liquidity pump and all-time highs coming because we may possibly now get a 0.5 BPS cut in September. Well, if the Fed cuts too early or cuts into sticky inflation, which we have September 11th CPI report, right after that revision on the 9th, they are kind of in a lose-lose scenario. They cut, we're fucked. They hike, we're fucked. They pause, we're fucked. Ultimately, the economy seems as if we are in a recession, and that is what big money is telling us. As U.S. government bonds, the 10-year yield tanks down to 4%, falling off an absolute cliff. The 20-year Treasury bond ETF TLT continues to rise, and investors continue to pour into gold. Now, good news is we are not yet ready to fall off a cliff. Why is that? Well, there are several reasons or indications that show we aren't quite ready to fall off for the SPY based on how investors are positioning in gold, but we may see a very similar reaction like we saw in March of 2020, where the markets crash first and then gold begins to sell off like it did from 1700 to 1450. Beyond the point, this is going to be bad. It's going to trigger margin calls across the board, and ultimately the Fed's in a bad spot, a very, very bad spot. How will they get out of it? I'm not too sure. On the good side of this, the good news is most of this is good for GameStop, for all of the GameStop investors watching the video. First of all, Japanese 10-year yield falls after Wed's data. I don't want to spend too much time on this. Ultimately, you go down the line and it shows that their economy is not actually good, even though we saw a pullback in the yield today. President Trump says he's going to make a big announcement at 4 p.m. today. I also wanted to throw this in the video because coincidentally, he's announcing it right at market close. And ultimately, big money is quietly selling into this week. Now, given we could have a couple of scenarios that could play out because we know how this market is retarded. But right now, we have catalysts. We have catalysts on the 9th. We have catalysts on the 11th. Then we have catalysts following that will affect other plays, which we'll talk about in a minute. But in the middle, right smack dab in the middle, we have the rate decision on the 15th and 16th, I believe, right in the middle of the month. The reaction into that is going to be watched very, very closely. Overall, we're in a fun, volatile month. Basic technicals, ignoring all the noise. The SPY is trying to hold this uptrend that it's been in since, well, it's been in a long one, but this trend that it's been in since May of this year has tested several times and actually broke under recently, recaptured it, and this green line that we had drawn out played out basically to a T. So we can get that off of the chart. Ultimately, we called for a chop trading through September, possibly October, before a market crash, which a market crash could very well get delayed, but just know that big money, big players are quietly selling and using retail as exit liquidity once again, and I don't want you guys to get trapped holding these bags. But things can shift. Again, they hedge, they reposition, they reallocate money, but ultimately a forced margin call or a forced unwind is what is going to cause the floor to break below. Now, the SPY ultimately on the daily time frame had this bearish engulfing candle today, closing lower with obviously a red volume candle. If we close below 645, that is bearish coming into next week, and we could likely see 638.70. Following that, we would reevaluate from there. We still have not sold off on the daily to test the 200 moving average, which I believe is due on the SPY, which means we could have a lot of room to sell off. The last time we went down there was May of this year as well. Ultimately, we move on and we see that analysts see a 40% plus drop for GameStop stock ahead of Q2 earnings. This is probably the dumbest thing I've seen all day, and I've seen some things. So we see 22.65, a 40+% drop puts GameStop under 13 bucks. I mean, I don't know what these people are smoking, but if it went under 13 bucks, I'm pretty sure institutions who have accumulated more than 100% of their position since last year would buy more of the stock anyway, just disregarding retail investors. And that would kind of be a dip sort of squeeze. Again, I don't think that's going to happen, but we would see some sort of Volkswagen squeeze right there. Now, XRT has been removed from Reg SHO 2 trading days prior to GameStop earnings, and perfectly T plus 33 from July OPEX. On top of that, okay, so we take the XRT ETF being removed from the threshold securities list. What do we have Friday, September 19th? Right in the midst of all this noise and catalyst, that is the quarterly ETF rebalancing period. Why that is important, not a lot of people are talking about it. Well, we saw, and shout out Fitzy over on Twitter, the last 4 dates XRT has come off Reg SHO. These are the moves that followed. And you can see GameStop right here, up 26%, up 40%, up 17%, and up following that all the way to $38, which was a nice percentage gain. Quarterly ETF rebalancing, aligned with what's happening with XRT being taken off the threshold securities list, brings us to they have to deliver real shares from GameStop into XRT, and that is what is likely going to happen. So ultimately, a lot of buying pressure coming into September 19th. In my opinion, I don't see downside. If we see downside, that is just dumb. And ultimately, I would be fine with losing money betting on the upside that GameStop has a crazy earnings and shorts try to exit, and there are shares being delivered that were shorted through XRT. Plus, there are order blocks, algo walls at 28 and 35 and beyond that, and that is because there is a gamma ramp building in the background as well. So if these order blocks can't stop GameStop, and you can see I had a price target of 36 and then 52 immediately. These are very conservative targets. All of these sell blocks are trying to hinder a squeeze from happening. So they're saying, yeah, if GameStop comes between $36 and $52, we need to smash this thing down, because if we break out of the $65 range, you're likely going to fly past 80 and then into the hundreds and then euphoria, and it's going to be the biggest headline across the board. We're going to basically get crushed, right? So we are seeing these sell walls up here. Now, that's not all. Unity's up 5%, 42. I said this thing can max out between 48 and 50 bucks. Chewy's still looking good, but that's not really what I wanted to point out. What I wanted to point out was Ethereum rallying, which we saw recently from its kind of chop trading. This is where GameStop got stuck in this chop trading, and since then Ethereum has skyrocketed. And the same thing goes for the squeeze plays. And also this goes for AMC too, so all the AMC lovers, don't click off the video. These are GameStop and Unity overlaid over Chewy, and what we can see is that GameStop has lagged behind. GameStop in the pink is completely lagging, while Chewy and Unity have just been climbing their butts off. And this goes with several other stocks in the basket, meaning GameStop is very, very behind. Is this from the bond offering dampening the volatility? Is this from multiple ETFs being created so they can keep this thing pinned? What is it from? What will it take? And will we gap out of the algorithm because of how much pressure is built in the background? Right, so all of those questions last. As far as AMC goes, the only really bullish thing I see is a sympathy move from a good GameStop earnings, a sympathy move from its investment in HYMC, and ultimately a possible spring on the monthly chart. Okay, a possible spring building, and we get a green September monthly candle that is a huge one. Okay, everybody loves a little bit of tin once in a while. The White House tweeted, "Can't stop, won't stop." They forgot to add GameStop after that. And then they put 31 billion in the background. Take that with what you will. Now, 115 million was liquidated from the cryptocurrency market in the past 60 minutes, and people are freaking out. But 4.55 billion worth of Bitcoin and Ethereum options expire today. And that is the volatility we're seeing. People are panicking that Bitcoin, Ethereum selling off, crashing. This is a cycle top. Realistically, if you avoid all the noise, we are in a consolidation period. You look on the weekly, you take a step back and look at the macro. Wow, it's a deep breath of fresh air. Maybe your whole portfolio isn't going to deteriorate that fast or as fast as you thought it was going to. Again, I think if we see, I'll reiterate it again in case I wasn't too clear. If we see more good price action across the board, and things don't have to move together, but if we see more solid bullish price action across the board in the very near future, that does not erase the cracks in the economy. And I do believe some sort of crash and opportunity is coming over the next 6 months, at least for it to start. And I don't think that will take 6 months. I'm just saying to give it enough time. That is my outlook currently. My outlook as well is that the carry trade unwind is in effect. Quarterly ETF rebalancing is in effect. We should see a very green earnings coming into effect next week. And there is no possible way I or Discord members, at least a lot of them, shout out you guys, are going into the weekend without holding GameStop calls. And I'm not telling you to buy calls. I'm not telling you what to buy, hold, or sell. I don't give financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. That is where we are positioning. And for the viewers who watch the channel, shout out to you guys. I appreciate the support. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Join the Discord, top link in the description. Use my custom indicator link under that. That is it. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Make sure to have post notifications on. I love you all. God bless. Lottery Socks out.